to another episode of ASMR Literary Theory. Today we will be analyzing the Girl Aquarium, which is a poetry collection by the booktuber, author and editor Campbell. Her poetry collection amasses a number of critical approaches that we will be using for this analysis, starting with societal criticism. She mentions that in the beginning of the book, she liked to expand on the ways society sees you as wrong and makes you confused, just so that the reader would feel that in the end the text, the author and the reader would be reclaiming themselves, much like the style in which Rupi Kaur's poetry collection The Sun and Her Flowers has been constructed. Her vocabulary draws on fairy tales, folklore and religion, which she considers repositories of motifs that hold the tapestry of society together. This is where the societal criticism interlaces with the mythological criticism. Her mythological criticism revolves around creatures of fairy tales, which is one of her interests, and expands on the way a normal person would be able to become extraordinary in any given context. In the poem The Woman's Private Looking Glass, she mythicizes creatures from a circus freak show and makeshifts them into her very own fairy tales drawn from experience. Because there is another dimension linked to the criticism of her works, her interest in the history of freak shows coming from her illness, as she has been dealing with EEE syndrome. So this way we are going into biographical criticism with the subdivision of gender criticism by mentioning her history with the syndrome and her interest that brings her back to the fairy tales, as well as her queer history as a queer person. She also mentioned that she enjoys reinterpreting fairy tales in order to give representation to everyone involved in a story, reader or author. Among her influences, she cites The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood, and if you'd like to analyze her book, you will see that it does have some feminist undertones. And from my perspective, she also draws heavily from Bukowski's work, from the poem They, All of Them, Know, in relation to her other poem called What the Bearded Lady Told Me, which she mentioned has been influenced and written after Katharina Brack. But if you go back to Bukowski's poem They All of Them Know, you will notice some similarities and the cultural influence of him and Margaret Atwood on her work. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to go and subscribe to Jen, and also if you'd like to remember any of the terms mentioned in this video, I will be linking my previous video on types of criticism around here. And do keep your eyes peeled for the next episode of the criticism series. Thank you and have a good weekend.